Okay, everyone, welcome to the A.W.A.K.E.N workshop, which is about transforming disturbing emotions into ease and joy. So today we are squeezing a fair bit into a fairly small time frame, but I want to start, as always, with acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands where we are all gathered. Obviously, we're all in different places. There will be different traditional custodians of the lands where we are, so we just take a little minute to remember and recognise and feel grateful for the fact that the traditional custodians have looked after this place for such a long time, and that we are able actually to be here to be together and to practice the Dharma, aka Buddhism, aka do a workshop about emotions. So to begin with, I'd just like to say that we're all equal and in this together, although I'm wearing this funny thing. I don't consider myself any different to you, and we're all here to work on something that we feel we need to work on. We're all the same in that sense. We all wish to be happy, and we all wish to be free of suffering, free of disturbing or disabling emotions. That is a universal concern. It's not just ours. So I also like to encourage you to get comfortable. It's quite hard to work on something that is difficult, like disturbing emotions, when we're not comfortable. So please take a little time to wriggle around and get yourself comfortable, and feel free at any point to take a break. I'll be doing a break each hour of about 10 minutes, so we can visit the amenities and get water and tea and things like that. But feel free to sip water, stretch, do whatever you like as needed throughout. It's important that we feel comfortable and relaxed when we're working with emotions. And I think in life in general, it's important to feel comfortable and relaxed. Okay, so you're likely here because you want to better manage disturbing emotions, whether they be anxiety, fear, anger, sadness, melancholia, panic, jealousy, envy. Some of the more tricky ones like resentment, regret, self-loathing. These are all what under Buddhism we call disturbing emotions. And what are they disturbing? They're disturbing our tranquility. They're disturbing our peace of mind. And the reason we frame them like that is because the true state of the mind, the natural state of the mind, is to be relaxed and to be open. So we call them disturbing emotions because they unsettle that openness. They make us close down, and they remove or block calm. Okay. Also, you're probably here because you're interested in mindfulness in some way. Or just a bit of a disclosure. This is mindfulness, what we're doing, but it's not mindfulness in the way that you most often see it taught and practiced, because this tradition, the tradition that I come from, is a little bit different. We have a very strong emphasis on relaxing into the nature of our mind, in relaxing into the true state of things, rather than struggling, fighting. Even I use the word transforming in the name of the workshop, but actually it's really not transforming. It's really actually resting in. So that we'll get to what that means later. And a little bit about me, just so that you know, I haven't just walked off the street and sat in this chair. I'm the Associate Chaplain with USQ's Multi-Faith Service, so I'm the Buddhist Chaplain at USQ. I'm also Senior Lecturer in Publishing and Writing and Editing, not that that's relevant in this situation. I've been a Buddhist practitioner for about 4 decades, so since I was about 11 years old. I'm probably told you all the story before about how I determined that I was already a Buddhist at about 11. And I have a past history with severe anxiety and panic. So when I was I've always had anxiety and panic. So as a very young child, so 3, 4 years old. But the official diagnosis came when I was around 19 years old, I think, 18, 19 years old. And the diagnosis was generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. So, and they were not mild versions of those things. They were quite extreme and quite severe versions of those things. So I had 24/7 anxiety and panic and obsessive thinking and behaviours. My OCD was more the thinking side of it, but definitely there were behaviours, but quite limiting and disabling behaviours. So, and I lived with that for a very long time. As I deepened in my practice, Buddhist practice over time, I was able to manage my anxiety, panic, and OCD, but I was not free of them. So I lived with them for many years and just managed them with occasional quite intense flare-ups. But Buddhism, in terms of its approach in a very general sense, was very helpful. But I was not free of them until a few years ago when I just got sick of it. I just found myself in a place where I just thought, I just cannot live with this level of daily anxiety and panic. So I determined to do something about it, and it was interesting to me because the tool for overcoming it had always been there. I just had not applied it. So I applied this method. Actually was inspired by a quote by my Lama, my teacher, and then I developed this process kind of organically over a few weeks of applying the ideas behind that quote from my teacher. And so that's what I've come up with here. This is what this was organic and kind of almost non-verbal, the way I did it. But because it worked so well, I thought I cannot not share this because it really worked very well. It's not something that comes from me. I didn't do it. It was from the teachings, a particular tradition of teaching. But I did it in a certain way, and I felt that that was a very easy way to do it. And also, so then I thought, well, it was very kind of organic and often non-verbal the way I did it. So that's not helpful to people. So I determined to sort of break it down, what I actually did. So that's what I'm talking about today. So this is a really famous quote from the Buddha. All experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, created by mind. If you don't know who the Buddha was, I'm sure you do. Everyone sort of vaguely knows, but the Buddha was a human being. Buddha is not a deity or a god or an angel or some supernatural person. The Buddha is just a human being who lived 2,600 years ago, possibly a bit later. The anthropology and archaeology is now telling us that maybe he lived a bit earlier than that. So that about 600 BC, perhaps much earlier, a couple of hundred years earlier even maybe. Anyway, he was in a very privileged position, and he one day snuck out of his home. His father was a local king. There are lots of small kingly states in northern India at that time. And he was, his father was a very protective kind of person and kept his son, Siddhartha, isolated from the world. And then one day, Shakyamuni or Siddhartha, Shakyamuni means the Buddha, he snuck out of the palace and saw how other people were living, and he was really shocked by it. And it gave rise in him to what has become the heart of the Buddhist path, which is compassion and loving kindness. So when he saw people suffering outside the palace, because inside the palace they hid sickness from him, they hid poverty from him, they hid everything from him. And when he was out in the world, he saw sickness, old age, and death. And he decided that that was not acceptable, that it was not acceptable that human beings and animals should endure that. So he determined to leave everything, to abandon everything, to go out and practice meditation, essentially, and find a way for all sentient beings to be free of suffering. And as a Buddhist, we believe that he did find the way, and then he taught the way, and over the last 2,600 years, the members of the Buddhist community, they have taught that to everyone else. So the other thing I'd like to say at this point, you don't need to be a Buddhist to use these things. actually there's no belief system required. There is a belief system in Buddhism, but actually you don't need it. You do not need it. You just need the method, right? You just need the method. And also, if is things in Buddhism that are kind of like belief systems, the Buddha requested that we be critical in our thinking around them and not believe them just because he said so, but test them out ourselves, to try ourselves, to experiment and see if they're true. And if we find they're true, we can accept them. Okay. So because, as that quote indicated, our thoughts make the world, how we think really matters. It's really important if you have a problem with emotions like anger, anxiety, fear, panic, or if you have physical pain and stuff like that, it is important to recognize and acknowledge that the way we think matters. So I'm not talking about positive thinking, because positive thinking is not usually very helpful and actually can be quite harmful in some situations because it causes people to not look at the reality of things. But negative thinking patterns, right, they self-perpetuate and they have a harmful impact on our emotional and physical well-being. So that might seem like a contradiction. I'm saying don't just do positive thinking, it's not helpful. But negative thinking is not great. But actually there's a place in between those two things. There's a place of actually meeting reality as it is and challenging negative thinking patterns to disturb us without putting on top of our experience all these positive thoughts, that actually are not helpful and can be distracting. So the downside to negative thinking is that the more we think negatively, the more negative we become and the more physically ill we feel. There's a lot of research, the Buddha said this 2,600 years ago, but there's a lot of medical research now that shows how we think really matters. Negative thinking impacts our immunity. Negative thinking impacts the physical healing process, Negative thinking influences how we perceive the world, how we meet others. There's a huge amount of research about this now. You can Google it and figure it out for yourselves. But the upside to all this is we can actually change the way we think. This is a fundamental Buddhist idea. We can change the way we think and thus change the way we feel. And in fact, there are other flow-on effects. So when we change the way we think, we change how we feel. And also then our perception shifts also. So the way we receive people and the way we encounter the world, that also changes and becomes more enriched. So, why wouldn't you do it? This is the question. I think, there's no reason not to do it. So the process I developed out of the quote from my teacher is called A.W.A.K.E.N. I'm still kind of figuring this out, but A.W.A.K.E.N stands for awareness, welcoming, analysing, knowing, embracing, and nowness. And I'll go over those in a moment, but I just want to say that you could fiddle with these a little bit and make them nouns. So it was so awareness and then a welcome, and then analysis, and then knowledge, and then an embrace, and then nowness. You can fiddle with them in any way you like. It doesn't really matter. It's just this is kind of like the process, the sort of meditative or psychological process that I went through to overcome my anxiety and panic and OCD. So at the top there it says, awaken, prepare in a calm moment. So for me, and this is the same if you've had any experience with the RAIN protocol by A.W.A.K.E.N, very similar. In some senses, they're quite profoundly different in others. So I don't know how Tara teaches her process, but for me, you need to prepare in a calm moment. So I always encourage people to choose. So if you have disturbing emotions, and we all do, okay? We all do. And when they're gone, what's left? True sanity, So why wouldn't you want true sanity? So I would suggest, even if you don't have a diagnosed disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, OCD, disturbing emotions are actually like a disorder. And actually, there's no like about it. They are a disorder. It's disordered thinking. So it's really good to take time each day, I feel, to understand this process and understand thoughts and emotions, so that then when we are hit by, a flash of anger, or a moment of panic or dread or fear, or even just stress, in the workplace, or jealousy or envy, or any of those disturbing emotions, anything that unsettles the ox cart, anything that disturbs calm, it is really important to prepare in the calmest moment we have each day. So usually our emotions go in cycles, like, I'll come to it again in a minute, but they're like waves. So they rise, they peak, and then they break, and then they dissolve, and we actually don't need to do anything for them to do that. That's just what they do. So it's good, and our day will be like that. There'll be a rising of our disturbing emotion, there'll be a peak when it's at its worst, then there'll be a break, when it starts to fold in on itself, and then there'll be the dissolve, and then we'll come back to kind of a moment of calm again before it all starts again. So choose a moment in your day or night when you are at your calmest. Everyone has such a moment, and it's fairly easy to recognize it. It's the time of day that we like. For me, it's early in the morning, just after sunrise. It's very quiet. I can have like a solitude. The birds are singing, and I feel energetically strong at that time. I feel quite awake, alert, and energetic, right? So you choose that kind of a moment where you feel quite calm, usually it's the same time every day, but sometimes it will shift. Sometimes the moment of calm you normally have doesn't happen at a time, it happens at another time. So be a little bit flexible and sit down, and then you do this process as a prep. And I'll give you some sort of tools that you use to prep later. So, and then when that just really strong disturbing emotion hits, like anger or anxiety or panic, you'll be able to apply A.W.A.K.E.N, the A.W.A.K.E.N protocol, if you like, and it will work. If you try to apply the A.W.A.K.E.N protocol without having prepped in a calm moment, it simply won't work. You need practice with these things, and you need a level of understanding around thoughts and emotions, so that when you apply it in a difficult moment, it will work. You really need the prep, okay? So recognize, that's homework number one, recognize the moment in your day that you're at your calmest, or when you have some solitude, or even just time to do this, okay? Now, the first step of the A.W.A.K.E.N system or protocol is to bring awareness to your body, to bring awareness to your sensations, feelings, and thoughts. So in this step, we simply recognize what is happening. And this is quite non-verbal. So you can be standing or sitting, but in the prep moment, I think it's good to be in a really comfortable position, sitting or even lying down, like in the picture there, lying down, looking up at the sky. And you can close your eyes, but you don't have to close your eyes. You can just close your eyes and just be aware of what's happening with your body. Is there any other, what other sensations? So when we're in peak disturbing emotion time, we will have sweaty palms, our stomach will be a little bit tight or churny, our heart rate will be elevated, we will feel tense and tight like that. We may feel a little lightheaded. There'll be all kinds of sensations where we're in that peak. If we're angry, our face will be very red, we'll clench up like that. When we're frightened, we sort of physically do this thing where we sort of protect ourselves. So just bring awareness to your body, to sensations. What are, just non-verbally, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Okay? And also bring awareness to what you're thinking, So when we're in a state of disturbing emotion, we have thoughts, and sometimes, and I would suggest to you that most commonly, until we start to do something like this process, we don't really know what our thoughts are. They're just kind of happening. And they are triggering a lot of the physical stuff that's going on for us. And we're not truly sure what we're feeling or what we're thinking. So this step is to really know, to be aware. What's happening with the body? What are my feelings? What sensations are there? What thinking is happening? So just observe, be aware, okay? Not in a tight, controlling, I've got to watch all this stuff going on. Just relaxed awareness. Just be aware what's going on, and don't shy away from what's there. Just be aware of it. Aware of your sensations, your feelings, and your thoughts. It's fairly simple, but surprisingly, we just don't do it. So this is the first step in the awaken process. And then the next thing we do is we're welcoming. We adopt an attitude of welcoming to our sensations, feelings, and thoughts. Normally, when we have disturbing emotions, our tendency is to push them away, to reject them, to label them as negative and run, or to distract ourselves. Put the TV on, put music on, engage in conversation, drink alcohol, smoke pot, whatever people do to distract themselves. Okay, so we're doing not that. We're welcoming every feeling, every sensation, and every thought we're having. And the reason we do that is because fighting against the feelings we're having makes them stronger. Avoiding the feelings, thoughts, and sensations we're having means that we somehow believe that they are real or true. It's probably a better word. That there's a reason for them. You know, that there's a significant reason for them. Also, in avoiding them, we don't pay attention to them, which means we don't see this, you know, ebb and flow of them. We just don't see that happening. So then, by avoiding them, we feel that these sensations, feelings, and thoughts are somehow much stronger than they actually are, much more lasting than they actually are. And it kind of, by every time we distract, avoid, or push away, it trains us to think that those sensations, feelings, and thoughts are a lot stronger than they are, a lot more difficult to deal with than they are. And we also start to think that they're part of us. I'm an anxious person. I'm a compulsive person. I'm an angry person. All of those statements are lies. No person is angry, compulsive, or anxious. They have moments of anxiety, panic, and compulsiveness. But it's not intrinsic to their nature. It's not how they really are. Our nature is calm and compassionate. Okay, these are Buddhist ideas, but I think they're true, whether you're a Buddhist or not. So we consent to those feelings, and quite often, almost for some people, just consenting to those feelings and saying to yourself, I consent to feel this way, you know, they weaken because you're not resisting. But also you consent so that you can watch them, so you can see them. You can see that they come and go. You can see that they're not permanent. You can see that they're not really you. They're just things that come and go. So really consenting is important. And also, when you consent, right, to feel it, part of the reason for your consent is so that you will, by not avoiding, by not distracting, by not resisting, you'll recognize that these are not scary things. They just, you know, just consent to feel it, and you notice it comes and it goes. And you're fine after, you know, you are fine after they come and go. So it's really important to consent to feel them, to not resist, to not distract, to not avoid, okay? And I adopted this little aphorism, I consent to feel this way. I just used to say that to myself. So I would recognize or be aware of what's happening, right? That would take a few minutes maybe, sometimes very quick, you know. I used to do it on the bus, walking around, all over the place. I would just be aware of what's going on, and then I would consent to whatever I was feeling. You know, if I was feeling anxious, if I had sweaty palms, if my heart was racing, you know, if I was having like a, oh, you're going to pass out, you're going to pass out because I was feeling dizzy, I would just consent to feel that way. And quite surprisingly, a lot of it drops as soon as you consent. as soon as you stop resisting, stop looking for a way to run, stop trying to escape, you know, it weakens quite dramatically. But you need to prepare in a calm moment around being welcoming to these things. So that when you do it in a moment of panic, in a moment of anxiety, in a moment of anger, a moment of deep melancholy or jealousy, you know, it will work. You just welcome it. And welcome it knowing it's going to go away. You know, it will pass. And knowing that fighting it, avoiding it, or getting distracted by it, or distracting ourselves from it only makes it worse. It creates patterns, you know, that repeat, repeat, repeat. By consenting, you're kind of stopping the pattern. All right? So the next step is analysing. So this step is, if you know, once you are aware of your body, your sensations, feelings and thoughts, and then you consent to them. If something still remains, and quite often if you've got quite profound, you know, very strong fear, very strong anger, very strong anxiety, right? Very strong worry, very, very pronounced stress, it will still be there after you consent to it. But if it's not so strong, often when you consent, it just goes away. So the next step is to analyze the feelings and thoughts and the core beliefs behind them in order to lessen their power. So this, in the prep moment, I did this in a kind of a journal. So, and in the moment of panic, you just kind of like run through in your mind these questions. So what are the sensations and feelings? What do they mean? I'll just give you a bit of a cheat on this one. They always mean the sensations and feelings that you're in the fight and flight response. They almost always mean that. You know, if you've got sweaty palms or an upset stomach or you're feeling dizzy, you know, and there's also a strong emotion there, it's because you're in the fight and flight response. That's usually what these things mean. And then ask yourself, how uncomfortable am I right now? And I think it's really important at this point, because we know that thoughts, feelings and sensation stuff, they rise like waves and they peak and then they break and go away. It's important to recognize that, but it's also important to recognize how big is that wave, you know? Is today's wave of anger, you know, a 10 out of 10? Or is today's wave of anger a 2 out of 10? You know, and by rating it like that, instantly, if you rate it as a 3, you know, you're like, oh, I've had a 10, I can deal with a 3. You know, so you start to relax about what's happening. And then what do you think will happen? So usually when we have disturbing emotions, they're fueled by some kind of idea, you know, or belief. So, or fear, it's usually fear, you know. So for example, anxiety, people are anxious about something, you know. They may be in a public place and they get anxious, but it's not the public place that is the trigger of the anxiety, which is often what people think. I don't like public places. That's not it. The actual point is that they're afraid of what will happen in the public place. And usually what they're afraid of is that they'll freak out. They'll have a panic attack and everyone will see them and they won't be able to escape, you know. But most people with anxiety and panic also know that really rarely happens because they control it, you know. They find it out. So ask yourself, what is the worst that can happen? So what is your worst case scenario? Then ask yourself, how likely is that? And use evidence. You know, so for example, if your anxiety is that you're going to get mauled to death by a dog, ask yourself, how often has that happened to me? Are there any dogs here? Is this dog looking like it's going to maul me to death? You know, you use evidence. And usually the evidence says some anxieties are a little tricky because they're hard to disprove that they're absolutely not going to happen. So you have to talk in terms of, you have to think in terms of likelihood. What's the likelihood, you know? And then if it does happen, so what? So as an example, I have a medical condition called, it's called many things, neurally mediated hypertension is what it used to be called. I think now they're calling it neurocardiogenic syncope. What it means basically is that my brain and my the nerve between my brain and my heart, which is called the vagus nerve, doesn't communicate properly. And so I faint on certain triggers, right? So if pain is a trigger, so if I'm in a lot of pain, I will often just pass out. What else? Like heat is a trigger. So if it's very, very hot, I'll just pass, well, not even very hot, anything above 26 degrees really, I'll just pass out. And what's the, and like very acute emotions, I'll just pass out. So I'm treated now for it, so it doesn't happen. But before I was diagnosed and before I was treated, it led to a lot of anxiety and a lot of panic. Like, oh God, like what if I faint in public here? I'm going to be humiliated. People are going to be mean to me, blah, blah, blah. But eventually I started to ask myself, okay, so how likely is that to happen? And the answer was, not that likely, because although I had often fainted, I had not fainted every single time I went somewhere and did something, obviously, And also, when I had fainted, it's not really fainting. It's much more dramatic than that. It's like a seizure and then you're out, People had helped me. So the so what part was, well, actually, people helped me and were kind, and it wasn't, it wasn't an awful thing. Like there was no real humiliation because people were kind and thoughtful and helped me, So you ask, okay, so what? If I get really angry, so what? If I do get really angry, so what? If I do get really frightened, so what? If I do have a panic attack, so what? The worst case scenario you think will happen is often really not that bad. It's really not that scary. You think it is, but other people might not. Anger is a little bit tricky because it does deeply affect others in a quite negative way. So if it is anger, you ask yourself, okay, what's likely to happen? People will dislike me because I got angry. People will blah, blah, blah. You have to actually then trust that people will understand that your emotion got the better of you. And that requires communication. So you will need to, you do need to communicate to people, I have an anger problem. I have a fainting problem, I used to say to people, oh, I faint, So, but ultimately, nothing is ever as bad as we think. We awfulize things. We catastrophize things. We make out that if we happen to get angry, if we happen to cry, in public, if we happen to get anxious, we happen to panic, this is the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. It's just an emotion. Giving the emotions those kinds of powers is what makes them quite debilitating. You need to take that away by analysing the likelihood of it happening. And also, once you've got strategy in place, once you're doing this process, A.W.A.K.E.N, you're very unlikely to trip over into the anger, to trip over into the panic. Once you've got this under your belt and you've done this for a while, you'll see that emotion rise and you'll do the next steps, which we haven't got to yet, and it will just go. So it won't happen. So at this point, you can go, oh, I know how to deal with this. And I know how to deal with anger. I do this, this, and this, and that's it. Okay? All right. So the next step is knowing. This one will take a little bit of talking about. So we need to know the reality of sensations, thoughts, and feelings, and knowing that reality frees us from them. So this is a Buddhist idea that it's easy to see that it's true. So all sensation, thoughts, and feelings are impermanent, right? The F of the of there is hidden by the lady reading the book. And devoid of any substance, they will not last. They are real, so they're not like a fantasy. We are feeling this way, but they're not true. And what does true mean? True means that they reflect the reality of the situation, that they're accurate. Having a phobia about public places doesn't reflect the reality of public places. Public places are not that dangerous, Likewise, a lot of people have anxiety disorder, because of the heart racing and the sweaty palms and the tingly fingers and the dizzy feeling, they think they're going to have a heart attack or a stroke, right? But they're not. So the feeling or the thought that they're going to have a heart attack or stroke is a real thought, but it's not true. Okay, this difference between the real and the true is important. So you need to know the difference between, okay, I'm having a real thought, these are real sensations, right? But they're not true. And the blessing, they're impermanent. So I had a little aphorism that I used to repeat to myself at this stage. There's more to this, and I'm going to go into that in a minute, but I used to say to myself, thoughts and feelings are like waves, they come and they go of their own accord, which pointed to their impermanence and the fact that you actually don't need to do much. You don't really need to intervene. The panic will go. It can't abide forever. The anxiety will go. It can't abide forever. The anger will go. It can't abide forever. The sadness will go. It can't abide forever. Some of us get trapped in a long cycle, like my cycle of anxiety and panic was, what, 38 years, 35 years, something like that. So yes, this is a very long cycle, but I didn't do this. You know, once you start to do this, really, their impermanence becomes quite evident. So I'm going to talk about the reality of sensations, thoughts and feelings a little bit more soon, but I just wanted to, I'll just emphasize it here and we'll come back to it. I'll just do it here, I think, actually. We have a little bit of time before we have a break. So impermanence is real. We all kind of accept it as true. However, because of the way the mind works, which strings together disconnected thoughts and things, our feelings and thoughts seem permanent. Oh, I'm always anxious, people say. Actually, no, you're not. If you've ever had a moment of happiness, that's interrupted the anxiety. If you've ever had a moment of anger, that has interrupted the anxiety. Because you can only have one thought, one feeling, one sensation at a time, okay? Because they come in a rush, a sequence, that seems very much like bang, 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 bang. It seems like you've got many thoughts and many feelings and many sensations all at once. But the brain, even though you've got, like, you might have a sore knee and a sore elbow, it feels the knee, then the elbow, and it does it in rapid succession. So it feels like the pain in the knee and the pain in the elbow, they're both constant. But the brain can only feel it and recognize it and give you the signal one at a time. So it gets a signal from nerve endings in the knee, it goes pain. Then it gets a signal from the nerve endings in the elbow, and it goes pain. Pain, 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 pain. And it happens so rapidly that it seems like this pain in my knee and this pain in my elbow are happening at the same time, and they're constant. But it's actually an illusion. It's happening one at a time. Okay, same with, you can't think more than one thought at a time. They rush in succession, making it seem like you do, but there's only ever one thing in the mind at a time. Okay, now, the most important thing about them, though, is that they're impermanent. They don't last forever. That thing about recognizing how in your day things, there's a wave, there's a pattern, that shows you that there'll be moments in your day when your anxiety is very strong, or your panic or your anger or whatever it is, your fear, your loneliness, and there'll be moments in your day when they'll be weaker, okay? So and once you start to meditate, there'll be moments in your day when you don't have any of those things, which really helps, it really helps to have those meditation-induced moments of complete non-emotion. It really helps you to see, they're not always there. They're actually underneath, there's calm. So it's important to recognize the impermanence of them, and a good way of thinking about that is the wave thing. But another way of thinking about that is to try and find something in the universe that is permanent. And you won't find it. I'll give you the answer to the quiz right now. You will not find it. There's no such thing. So even things that seem permanent, like mountains, disappear over time. For example, the Himalayas are currently the largest mountain range on Earth, but once upon a time, the Flinders Ranges were the largest mountain range on Earth, and they were higher than the Himalayas, but they've been worn down. Eventually, that will be a flat plain, and After that, still, it might even be an indentation if water comes and moves the soil around. Even mountains are not permanent. They go. Stars die, galaxies collapse. Nothing lasts forever. Some things last a very long time. But thoughts, feelings, they're perhaps the most impermanent things in our universe. They have a very short life. Literally, people talk about, like, sometimes they have anxiety attacks that last, a whole day or something like that. But that's very short compared to everything else that happens in our life, right? So really understanding the impermanent nature of our thoughts and feelings, it is having that knowledge and being sure of it is really empowering when you have a moment of, disturbing emotion. So it's really important when you're in your calm moment to think about impermanence, to look at, simply to look out the window and see what's different. What's different out there? Seasons change. I mean, in Australia, you can live in places where the seasons don't seem to change that much. But if you're lucky and you live in a place where the seasons do change, look out the window. It changes. Also, some days it's sunny, some days it's cloudy, some days it's rainy, some days it's dry. Just look at the way that things change and recognize everything's impermanent. Nothing is permanent. Thoughts and feelings are the most impermanent things in the universe. They're very insubstantial. So this thing about being devoid of any substance, okay? So a lot of the time when we think about our emotions, we describe them in reference to ourselves, because we identify with our thoughts and feelings. We think that that's what we are. Buddhism tells us that that's not what we are, that what we are is more profound, more beautiful than that. These are just temporary manifestations, that pass through what we are. So, but we really identify with them. We identify with our perception and with our thoughts and feelings as though they are us, but they're not. So it's really important to understand that they are not a part of you, that they, the number of times people have said to me, oh, I'm just an anxious person. It's just the way I am. It'll never change. I am an anxious person. And I really find that sad, because it's just not true. And B, it means that person accepts that they will be anxious for the rest of their life, accepts their suffering, refuses to fight it, well, not fight it, but refuses to work with it, to face it and really see what it is. But also it means they will meet the anxiety and fear and sadness in others as though it were an inherent part of that person. So they will look at someone who has had an angry moment, and go, oh, that person's angry. So-and-so is angry. That's real. And they will label that person, and then from then on, that's how they'll see that person, which means it'll cut off compassion for that person. And compassion is our nature, our ultimate reality. It is all we are. And to cut that off is to cut yourself off. Not yourself, to cut the true nature off. To wallow in the impermanent rather than the real. It's really a shame and a tragedy. So it's really important that we recognize I am not an anxious person. I have anxious experiences. I am not angry. I have moments of anger. It's really important to produce that reality, to see that reality. The other thing about the lack of substancelessness, that's a bit of a mouthful. Their thoughts and feelings are, because they're so deeply impermanent, but also because where do they live? Where are they? Can you put them in your hand? Can you point them out? Can you even measure them? Can you find them? And if you find them, which sometimes when you're using logic, we can go, well, you know, there's a process that happens and that's where they are. If you take out some of the components of that process, they are not there anymore. So for example, sadness and anger and jealousy and envy and panic and anxiety, they're all triggered by something. Take away the trigger, they're not there. So that means that they lack inherent existence. They don't exist on their own. Anxiety can't exist on its own. It has to be resting on something else. And what is it resting on? It's resting on core beliefs we have, thought patterns we have. So we need to identify what they are and then undermine them in the analysis stage. Okay? So we'll move on to the next bit, which is embracing. So this is where it gets a little bit mystical. We've got 9 minutes before we have a break, so I'll try and get through this bit. So embracing the true nature of thoughts and feelings makes them fuel for our spiritual path. To embrace the true nature of our thoughts and feelings, we embrace joy and ease. So it seems simple. So I've just been talking about the true nature of thoughts and feelings. They're impermanent. They lack substance. They are not, they are utterly dependent on other things. And when we remove the other things, they are gone, right? So that's really important. Totally impermanent, totally dependent on other things. They're not real in and of themselves, okay? So it's really, really, really important that we understand that. And then to embrace, so this is getting real Buddhist here. So in Buddhism, we talk about the true nature, right? Which is the true nature of the mind, somewhere here, and the true nature of all things. And the true nature is very hard to describe because it has nothing to do with dualistic mind, the mind that thinks and feels and stuff. And it doesn't exist in a dualistic way. So, and language is completely dualistic. It's a part of the dualistic mind. So it's quite hard actually to take an experience of that true nature and talk about it. Like, because language in itself creates the separation between self and other, which is dualism. You know, so it's actually quite hard to talk about, but we can say that it has some qualities, you know, that we can point at it by saying it has some qualities, you know. So it has these qualities. This is the true nature of the mind, but also the true nature of all things, so even rocks. Okay, so it has the quality of stillness, right? So the mind in its true nature is still. It has the quality of luminosity or clarity or illumination. Those words are all kind of used. Now that is hard to describe and can only really be experienced. But it means that there is energy in everything, right? It means more than that, but I think that's enough for now. And then the next quality that the mind has, the true nature of mind, not the ordinary mind that thinks and feels, is movement. And what is the movement? Thoughts, feelings. So the true nature of mind is not, there's a deep stillness, right? But also there's this movement. So it seems like a paradox. So thoughts and feelings rise in the mind, but when you're not in the dualistic part of that mind that sees those thoughts and feelings as somehow permanent and lasting, they just seem like they are not what they say. They appear differently. You respond to them differently, you feel about them differently. I'm not really getting into the heart of that very well. There's some sort of Buddhist stuff here that needs to be underlying this, but I'm trying to do this in a way that, you know, if you're a Christian, you can do this, or a Muslim or a Jew, it wouldn't matter. So all you really need to recognize is that true nature of mind is calm and clear, and it has only sort of that movement we talked about before, The first movement is what we call, I won't use the Buddhist word because it'll just confuse you. It's compassion. Boundless though, boundless compassion. So you have the true nature of mind that is space. It's like space. That's the only way you can describe it, or like the open sky, you know. And then the first, it has luminosity, right? So it's rich and vibrant. And then it has movement. And the first movement, these are all just words pointing to something that are really hard to describe. The first movement is compassion. The first thing that rises from the true nature of mind is compassion, right? If you are stuck in dualistic mind, which means you're stuck in identifying with thoughts and feelings as you, these are me, I felt that, that's me, I saw that, that's me, I tasted that, that's me. If you're stuck in that process, that compassion will look like ordinary thoughts and feelings. That's what it will look like, you know. So, and then the next thing that rises out of that is, with the compassion, there's a sense of bliss, physical bliss, okay? So the true, and that physical bliss, if we're stuck in dualistic mind, we interpret as pain. We interpret as separation. We interpret as loneliness, sadness, all these things, you know? That's when we're separated from our true nature, everything has that taste of separation, of us being here and everything else being over there. And the minute you have that separation, what rises first off is, you know, attraction and aversion. We're attracted to some stuff that's outside of ourselves, and we're averse to some stuff that's outside of ourselves. But in reality, everything has the same taste. It's all the compassion. It's all just compassion. It's all just bliss. So that's the reality of the situation. So this is all a bit heavy and Buddhist. You probably need to do a bit more. You don't really need to be Buddhist, actually, for this to be meaningful to you. If you believe in God or Allah or Jehovah, if you're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, you could say God is within and God is love. So you could say that. And if God is within and God is love, you know, you could also say God permeates everything, right? Then that means all your thoughts and feelings are permeated by God, by love, right? So if you're a theistic kind of a thinker or a believer, that will work for you at this point. If you're a Buddhist, you kind of think the true nature of mind is compassion and bliss. All thoughts and feelings have the taste of that compassion and bliss. And behind them, when you drop dualistic mind, it is just compassion and bliss. So to summarize, the thoughts you have, the feelings you have, the sensations you have, in their true nature, they're bliss, right? But we're deluded, so we don't see that. So to embrace the true nature of thoughts and feelings means to embrace joy and bliss. Okay, so at this point, when you're preparing, you do a little bit of like, analytical thinking. You sort of go, okay, according to Buddhism, the true nature of thoughts and feelings is compassionate bliss, joy and bliss, right? So then you do a little meditation where you think about a moment in the past where you felt joyful, and you allow that joy to build in your body, to sort of grow. So you put your attention on it. As soon as you put your attention on something, it grows. So you remember how you physically felt when you were having that joyful moment, and you put your attention on it, and that will grow. And then you let it grow, let it grow, let it grow. And then you simply say to yourself, whatever your thing is, whatever your dominant thing is, we have a dominant thing, anxiety or anger or whatever. So let's say anxiety as an example. You just say, anxiety is bliss. I mean, I use the Buddhist words. I'd say anxiety is rigpa. Rigpa is the Buddhist word for the true nature of mind, which encompasses all these things. It's one word that encompasses, stillness, luminosity, movement, compassion, bliss, rigpa. It encompasses all those things. So I used to say to myself, when I drop into that joy, just feel the joy and let it grow. Then I would say, anxiety is rigpa. And then, you know, and it's, you can say the true nature of my anxiety is joy and bliss. But I think collapsing it down is easier and better. So you can just say, you know, anger is joy, you know, and just start to understand that in its true nature, it's joy. And then when you feel anger rising, right, or anxiety rising, or whatever, you just remember that joy and drop into that joy and just go, anger is joy. And then you're just there in joy. You're just sitting there in joy, and the anger just goes. It takes some time to get here. You have to do this prep. But then in the moment, you know, you can go through the processes and then go anger is joy, and it will just go away, you know. But as you advance, you'll just need to do this bit. You just need to drop into joy and go, anger is joy. You might not even need to say it anymore. You just drop into joy, and anger just goes. You know, the true nature of the anger is revealed, you know, as joy. There's another step which helps you to lengthen that, you know, which we'll do after the break, because it's 10 o'clock, so I'll have a break. I'll just unmute you all, and if you want to ask questions, you can. But otherwise, we'll just have a little bit of a break. How's everyone going?
Good.
Who was that?
That was me.
How you going?
Claudia.
Hey?
That was me.
Okay, are we all good?
We're all good.
All right, so we'll have a break, and then we'll come back in 10 minutes, and we will continue.
Great.
All right, so we're back from our break, and we'll just pick up on embracing again. So the reason I put that little picture there of the two lion cubs cuddling is because when I talk about embracing the true nature of thought, so remember I'm talking about this Buddhist idea that you can accept or not. Accepting it will help you, not accepting it will mean you need to do a bit more, kind of like calisthenics, mental calisthenics, to get this process to work. But this Buddhist idea that the true nature of all things is ultimately, there's just one word, you know, compassion. Ultimately, the true nature of all things is compassion. Our own true nature is compassion, and the true nature of the thoughts and feelings we have is also compassion. So, and compassion makes you feel joy, right? So, to work with the dualistic way we see things, you know, as in we're here and it's over there, we summon some memory of joy. So we're working with that dualistic nature of the mind that has memories of the past and the present and thinks about the present and projects onto the future. So we use that tendency of the mind to undermine it. So you remember joy, you allow that sensation of joy to grow, and then you embrace that joy. And the reason I got the little cubs there is because embrace is a full body thing. There's real contact. So it's not like you have to really go in to the joy. You have to let that sensation really grow in you. And it, you know, like it feels like you're faking it till you make it at first, but that's also just kind of a delusion. What you're doing is you're doing something, you know, which seems like you're creating it, but actually the joy is already there. You're just using the memory to be able to connect with it. And then you place your awareness on that joy, the physical feeling of it, how it made you feel. And by placing your awareness on it, and how I said the brain, the mind can only do one thing at a time. By placing your awareness on it, it seems to grow. It's not really growing. You're just, now your mind is just doing that. It's just focused on the joy. So the joy seems to grow, and you allow that to happen by continuing to have your awareness on it, right? By not getting distracted, by thinking and pain in my knee and stuff. keep saying pain in my knee because I've actually got pain in my knee today. Anyway, so you just let the joy be, and then you fully go in. So it's a full body, full mind embrace of joy. You really go in. There's no other way. There's not a good way. There's probably other ways of describing it, but there's not a really good way of describing it. You kind of will know what I mean when you do it. It's a full body, full mind going in. And I use the phrase drop sometimes because it feels to me sometimes like the mind drops and there's just joy. So it's a little bit like going, whoop, like popping into a pool of joy. It's a little bit like that. So I want to repeat this idea again so that we really get it. All things, as we experience them, we misperceive them. So when we seem to be looking externally at something out there, that in itself is a misperception. The separation is a misperception. And if everything is joy in its nature, or compassion, which makes you feel joy, then everything should help you to settle into joy. But because of the dualism thing, where we're here and there's stuff out there, we like some things and we don't like others. So, I've heard people say, I don't like rainforests. And I'm just, what the what now? Because they like other things and they don't like that thing. So, and I myself have done this because I grew up inland, and so the things that I liked were the things that gave me peace and tranquility in the midst of all the nightmare I had as a child, with all that anxiety and panic and everything. The things that I really like and very attracted to and attached to were things about being inland. The open spaces, the sky, the kind of goldy coloured native grasses, and at dawn, the dew on those grasses and the way that reflects the light and stuff, like these things used to make me really they do still make me feel great joy, but take me to a beach and I'm like, yeah, because I just didn't have that connection with the beach. It never was a happy place for me. In fact, it was always an unhappy place for me because I was a very anxious, shy kind of person, and beaches are very people have got their stuff all hanging out and there's a lot of noise and it's all very physical, so I was always like, oh, I don't like the beach, and I would strongly say that, oh, I don't like the beach, and I remember often the sound of waves. I remember saying to a friend that the sound of waves reminded me of traffic noise because it had that irritating quality, and he just looked at me and went, oh my God, you're so urban. But that's not the truth. I'm not urban at all. I just didn't have a positive association with it. So now I have made it a thing to go through, you don't have to do this, I'm just telling you, to go through all the things I dislike and just drop them. See the joy in them, So you don't have to do this, but it is, I think, useful to think about the things that we're averse to and just drop those aversions, It's okay to have likes and dislikes, of course, but sometimes they're completely fabricated. There's no real reason to dislike this thing, We just do because it has a negative memory associated with it. The adult and mature thing to do is to look at why. Why do I have a negative association with that thing? And face it and then drop it. Okay. All right. So it's important that you in your journaling, I'm going to give you some journaling questions later in the session. I think we'll finish early today because I've ran through that first stuff quite quick. In your journaling, in your preparing in a calm moment, you have a little list of things. I should have brought that out and showed you. A little list of things that make you happy, that give you joy. They don't have to be like fireworks type experiences. Very subtle things are fine. You build on them. People who've got anxiety and depression, often joy is a rare experience in their life. And that was true for me. So it took me a while to really be able to go, okay, where is the joy in my memory? And then zoom in on it and let that show, let the joy come through the memory. The joy that is already here, it's the true nature of everything, to let it come through the memory. You use the memory to let it come through. That's it. So you're always joyful, but it's all blocked. Your true nature is compassionate and joyful, but it's completely blocked. So what we're trying to do is use the memory to trick the ordinary mind, to think that this is something it's doing. And then the joy comes, and then as you rest in the joy, interestingly enough, the other stuff drops, the dualism drops. I'm probably not making a lot of sense, but it will make sense as you do it. Okay, we'll move on now. And I'll give you lots of time for questions at the end, which won't be recorded. So I know that I'm repeating this a lot, but I'll just go over this quickly now because I have definitely said this 3 or 4 times now. So mind in its natural state is calm and clear like water. Agitation is not its natural state. Anxiety is not its natural state. Panic is not its natural state. Anger is not its natural state. Jealousy is not its natural state. Fear is not its natural state. Aversion is not its natural state. Even attachment, clinging to something that you like, like that kind of, I don't like to use the word greed because it's a bit Christian, but not there's anything wrong with being Christian, but that, greedy wanting, that's not the nature of the mind either, right? The mind is naturally calm and clear. We talked about stillness. It has stillness. And clear, that's luminosity. So it's like a sky, open but full of light, okay? And then thoughts and feelings are like waves on a deep ocean. They rise, peak, and then dissolve naturally. So, the mind is like the deep ocean, which is calm and clear, very still, nothing going on, just loveliness, quiet, luminous light filtering through and occasional little ripples of movement, and those are very subtle at that deep level. The movement's very subtle, it's quite profoundly quiet and peaceful and calm, really interesting. And then at the surface of the ocean, however, we have all this stuff going on, which is all, triggered by something else, triggered by the wind, triggered by movement, triggered by whatever. It's never the true nature of the ocean to be choppy, it's always produced by something. And the same with our thoughts and feelings. They're produced by something. Usually a core belief that we have that has led to a negative thinking pattern that we repeat, okay? So, but thankfully, because thoughts and feelings are rising from that deep ocean, right? They're of the same nature as that deep ocean. They will naturally go back in to the deep ocean without us having to do anything. But we can speed that up by recognizing how impermanent it is, recognizing that it has, a little point, a midpoint, recognizing it's very important, very impermanent, and it has no real substance. It's just, chopped on the surface of the ocean. Why focus on the waves, when we could focus on the deep? There's just no reason. And the reason we do it, of course, is because our perception sees only the waves. We only see the surface. So, no matter how turbulent the surface, in the depths all is calm, no matter negative thinking affects the true nature of mind. The ocean depths are unaffected by waves on the surface. That perfect calmness is always underneath, always reachable. And that perfect calmness has as its first movement compassion, which elicits bliss or joy. Okay? So those are that's the real movement. And then we misperceive that as something happening outside ourselves. And then we create attraction and aversion, which leads to anger, hatred, envy. All those things come from that initial misperception that what occurs is separate from us. Okay? So in their nature, I've said this before, I'm just going to repeat it, in their nature, thoughts and feelings, even negative ones, are of the same nature of the deeper mind. So they have that joy taste, that compassion taste. It's not like it's not like anger is exactly joy, but it's a little bit like, you know how you eat a fruit, what's all that, plantains, I think it's a plantain, which is like a banana. You know, you eat that plantain and it tastes a bit like a pineapple, you know. So it's like that. Anger has the taste of joy underneath. And it's like when you eat that plantain, which is a banana, there's a taste of banana, but underneath there's this little pineapple-y flavour. And when you notice that, it's like suddenly it's all pineapple. It's like, wow, that's very pineapple-y. You know, it's like that. When you notice the true nature of the thing, that's the thing you dwell on. Okay? The deeper mind has only two characteristics, bliss and balance, compassion, which I've been repeating ad nauseum. So, also, this is true of the mind. The true nature of thoughts and feelings is joy and compassion, bliss and compassion. It's also true of all things, everything. The true nature of all things is that stillness, luminosity, and the movement, which is compassion and bliss, right? Which means once we've dropped all of our crap, all of our neuroses, all of our dualistic thinking, our identification with me and my, and these thoughts and feelings are me, this is what I am. Once we drop all that, everything that comes through the perceptions of senses, you know, eyes, ears, nose, everything that comes through them gives rise to only one thing, which is joy and it's combined joy and compassion. So you can't separate them out. So it's compassionate joy. I suppose loving kindness is the way it's phrased sometimes, but those are quite different things. Compassion is the wish for beings to be free. Loving kindness is the wish for them to be happy. So they're a little bit different, but you can't really separate them out. So all things, when you are, you know, when you've been meditating for a while and when you've dropped all of that stuff and you are able to rest in the true nature of mind and all things, the experience is one of joy, happiness, boundless compassion, like a compassion that does not have any conditions. It's limitless. It's an interesting thing. All right. So now, once you've got your memory of happiness or joy and you've placed your attention on it and therefore it has grown, you know, or seemingly grown, but really what's happened is you've just uncovered your natural joy state. Once you've done that, then the way to continue it, right, and this will at first be, you'll have a few seconds of joy, you know, and then you can say like anger is joy, and there'll be a little bit of joy, a little bit of ease. There's a sense of ease too, because that comes from the relief of letting go of the anger, of seeing the anger for what it is. It's actually joy under there. And so there's joy and then there's ease, which is like relief. It's like, like free of that, you know. My teacher used to talk about, it's like coming home from a really hard day at work and then you just kind of sit down and go, I'm home, you know. It's just like all that is just gone and you just feel great ease and relief. So now my Lama calls that state. So once you drop dualistic mind and you're resting the true nature of mind, he calls it present nowness, which is Rigpa. Again, that word. It's translated many, many, many ways. Rigpa, which just means the true nature of mind. It has all these, you can talk about it in many ways. Stillness, luminosity, movement. Bodhicitta, which means compassionate, boundless compassion, compassion that doesn't need anything to attach itself to. Love is another way of putting it, I suppose. And then the way to stay there in that state, right, is what we call nowness. It's present nowness, which really, in its most simple form, just to stay in the present moment. So to not dwell on the past, to not anticipate the future, to just stay here, right? And the way to do that is you learn to do that through meditation, okay? So this nowness indicates meditation is important, Obviously you can't meditate when you're in a state of panic or anxiety, but you do it as a prep. So to rest in nowness, we simply sit in silent meditation. Silent meditation is important. Silence is important. Obviously, if noises happen, that's okay. Just let them go. Then, it's okay. They're joy in a way. So meditation is important for this part. So staying in the present moment with the joy, right? That's how you sustain it. So when you've got your memory of joy, you've allowed that joy to come through, you've recognized that that's the nature of everything. And so whatever was happening for you, anger or sadness or anxiety or panic, even pain, even physical pain, that's dropped away, right? Some pain will linger if it's chronic. But I have chronic pain. When I do this, it becomes an uninteresting backdrop, a boring thing that's happening that's not affecting me. It's not like it's become a bowl of cherries or anything. It's not become something great. It's just no longer interesting to the mind. And it no longer diminishes the joy. That's the thing. It can be there and you can still be joyful. It's interesting what it does with pain. Okay, and then once you've got the joy, you've allowed it to come through, you've recognized the true nature of whatever you were experiencing is the joy, then to get that joy to sustain, right, you just remain present. And Düddul Rinpoche called it present nowness because it indicates two things. Present moment, just be in the present moment. And the way to be in the present moment is just rest your awareness on your breathing. While your awareness is on your breathing, you're in the present. You're not in the past or the future. Of course, thoughts will come and go. Let them, it's fine. Leave them alone. Just ignore them, kind of. They come, they go, big deal. Awareness is on the breath and you stay in the present. And the other part of the present part of present nowness is to be, right? The awareness, this being, this awareness is there. So it's presence and present. So awareness is present and you are present in the present moment. And then if you can rest in the nowness, and I use that phrase a lot, rest, because it means there's not a lot of striving, there's not a lot of effort. You will get distracted, but gently bring yourself back to the present, And yes, you get distracted again. Just gently come back. It's all okay. Eventually, thought will rise and peak and subside, and you'll see it happening, but you will remain utterly present. You won't get swept up, and it will come and go, in a way that's playful. Actually, you just sort of go, oh, isn't that interesting? You just recognize that it's there. You just see it in a way, but you don't become entangled. You don't follow it. You have no reaction to it. It's just like observing it. So you remain present in the joy. And that joy, don't hang on to the joy once you've got like the joy stabilized, you're staying in the present and the joy becomes, strong, and you really kind of like, it's really enriching your life, you know. Also be aware that at some point the joy will drop into stillness. At some point, the mind will go really still. And lots of meditators freak out at that point because they're like, oh, yeah, oh, I really like the bliss. You know, they get very clingy about that experience. But the stillness is a necessary thing. And then that stillness will become luminous, right? And then the movement will become clear. So these are not happening all at once. There'll be periods of time when you're in just complete stillness in your meditation. This is down the track a bit. Then the luminosity will show. I'm not going to talk about it too much because you need to experience it. And then the movement will come again, right? And some people, when the movement comes again, they think, because they're really attached to the joy and they really got upset that it went. Then they're like, okay, I'll just rest in stillness. It's fine. Then the luminosity happens and they go, ooh, how exciting. And then they go, okay, I'm not going to hang on to the luminosity. It's okay, just let it all happen. It's all fine. Whatever happens is fine. Then the movement returns, right? And sometimes meditators can get quite, thinking again. They feel like they've gone back, but they haven't. Then now it comes and goes in this playful way. And you're just aware of it, you know. And at that point, that's when you can move around in the world and be compassionate. You don't need to sit on your cushion so much. You can be in the world and be in joy and be compassionate. You can see everything as it really is. And you can act in a way that benefits others. So the movement enables you to do that, you know. Seeing what happens, what rises in the mind, and being able to give rise actually to thought and all that stuff so you can be creative. These are good, right? So don't get hooked on the joy, although we're using the joy in this instance to overcome a worse situation, disturbing and disabling emotions and feelings and stuff. The joy itself is not the point. Rest in the joy, yes. Then stay in the present moment with the joy. Eventually, though, the joy will drop and there'll just be stillness. And that's good. Then don't get addicted to the stillness either, because it's very, there are stories of meditators staying in that stillness for decades because it's very appealing. And there's a story about an Indian Swami who would rest in stillness, and as a child, this person was only 5 or 6 years old or something, and the other children in the neighbourhood in India would set fire to the person's clothes, to the kid's clothes, trying to disturb his meditation, to wake him up, to bring him out, and he wouldn't react. He wouldn't put the fire out. So his mother had to always be there to put the fire out. There's other stories of meditators who go into meditation and then, insects start to burrow into their legs because they have no sense of pain anymore. They just don't care. And they don't scoot the bug away. So then someone has to, be there to care for them. And they even will stop eating or just stay in that stillness and not care about food. So you don't get addicted to the stillness either. You just rest in it, let it go, let it happen or not happen. Doesn't matter. And then when the movement comes back, don't think you've gone backwards. Just recognize this is the natural radiance of the mind, actually, and recognize it for what it is. It's bliss and compassion, and let it rise and fall in its own way. All right, so I know this is a lot, and I'll give you the recordings so that you can go over it, and I'll give you the slides, these little things, so you have notes. But I'm not going to share the recording widely because I have a book deal around this process. Can't tell you who with, but a Buddhist publisher has approached me and asked me to write a book about this, and I am doing that. So I'm not going to share this around widely because I want to kind of perfect it actually before it becomes a public thing. But I will let you have the recordings and the notes. Okay, so this is just sort of a summary kind of a thing. And I've got this A.W.A.K.E.N acronym thing as a document, and I'll let you have that as well. So I'm just going to Minimize that so that I'm not distracted by it, and minimize that. So first off, A for awaken, be aware of your body, sensations, feelings and thoughts. Simply recognize what is happening. And the W part, welcome your feelings and thoughts. And then I use the aphorism, I consent to feel this way. And then analyze feelings and thoughts and the core beliefs behind them. So negative thought patterns always have a core belief behind them. So for example, with people who have anxiety, they often have a negative thought pattern that they're going to have a heart attack or stroke. The core belief behind that is that the physical symptoms of the fight or flight response are real and point to a physical problem. Once they recognize that they've got that belief, they can use evidence to undermine it. The fight or flight response causes all those symptoms. It's not indication of heart attack or stroke. And they undermine it that way by applying evidence. Okay? There are others. Some people have like profound, self-loathing and stuff like that. And there's some kind of core belief underneath that. It's important when you're doing your journaling and stuff to try and identify that core belief. There'll be more than one that leads to these negative. If you've got more than the ordinary negative emotions, like if you've got quite disabling negative emotions, like disabling anger, disabling anxiety, disabling panic, okay? And then the K part, recall your knowledge of the reality of sensations, thoughts and feelings. Their impermanence and empty nature. Now, that phrase, empty nature, means their substancelessness. Remember how I talked about they're dependent on other things to exist. When you pull those other things out, like if you pull the core belief out, the negative thinking pattern stops. So they're not real in and of themselves. They have no inherent existence. They exist in dependence on other things, which means you can easily pull out some of those components and they'll go away. Okay? And then embrace the true nature of thoughts and feelings, summon joy and rest in ease. That's what we've just been talking about now, about using the memory to connect with our joy that's already there but is obscured. Okay? And then abide in nowness, which we just discussed, so I don't need to really go over it much more, which is a state of perfect rest in which thoughts and feelings are harmless play. So, and we talk about how in your meditation, so not in this process, but in your meditation, which is a support to this, you'll go through a period where lots and lots of thinking, then the thinking sort of settles, and then you'll start to feel some sort of joy and happiness or freedom. And then you will start possibly to have strong bliss. Everyone's different. Experience is different for everyone. And then that will drop and you'll be in stillness. And then there'll be movement again. So it's like a circle. But when the movement comes back, it's pure compassion. It's not the ordinary thinking anymore. It's not the separation thing, which leads to aversion and attraction, which leads to all those things. Anger, hatred, jealousy, greed, all those things come from that separation. All right, so that's it in a nutshell. And I'll just move on to this next mindfulness day to day. So journaling, I'll give you some prompt questions in a minute. So I think if you choose a moment in time when you're calm, in the day when you're calmest to do this work, you have a little journal. I should have brought you. I've got what I call a joy journal now. I used to do this, but now I've got a joy journal where I just note down the things that make me happy. Because the Buddha said you can't achieve enlightenment without joy. So it's really important to recognize where is the joy. We don't cling and chase those things. We just recognize there is joy. Here's joy. Here's a little bit of joy. There's a bit of joy. And we also really wish that all other beings have joy. That's a really strong, that's a very transformative thing, to wish and hope that all other beings experience joy. It's a very important thing. Okay, so set aside time for relaxation. So it's really important. Meditation works better when you're relaxed. Uptight kind of meditation, meditation's about concentration and logging every experience in the body, which is what they often do in the mindfulness tradition. It's not necessarily helpful for some people, but this is a more rapid way to undo your dualistic mind. Just relax and then do your silent sitting meditation. You only need a little, 20 to 30 minutes, but please do it every single day. Now, I know that everyone says, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. But honestly, if you had cancer, you'd find time to get treatment. This is equally dire. You know, you will not ever be free. You will not ever be truly, fully sane if you don't do this, if you don't sit. And although meditation at first can be like a chore, uncomfortable, and then there's rapid thinking, which is quite unsettling, but then that settles down, you know, the experience of meditation down the track, and I'm not talking about years, I'm talking about just a few months, 3 or 4 months, it is of ease, joy, happiness, enthusiasm. Like, it really becomes a very positive thing. Sometimes we have a bad day and the meditation is just, difficult. But over time, those become rarer and rarer. But actually, that even 20 years in, you can have a bad meditation session. That's okay. Good and bad meditation both do the same thing, make you familiar with the mind. That's what we're after. We want to see what's going on there, and in seeing what's going on there, it settles. Okay, so choose a daily activity to apply mindfulness to. So walking or eating or doing the dishes or whatever. And mindfulness simply means to just be aware of what you're doing, to be in the present, to not be thinking about the past while you're washing the dishes, to not be thinking about what you have to do tomorrow while you're washing the dishes. Just wash the damn dishes. That's it. That's all you're doing. That's what your mind's on. Okay? And then cultivate joy each and every day. So you know how I said that sometimes people with anxiety and pain, they can find it hard to think of a joyful memory to help connect with their, hidden joy, the hidden joy that's inside. So for that reason, it's important to actually cultivate joy, ordinary joy, every day. Which is why, I keep a little joy journal and write down the things that make me feel joy. And over time, I just do them more. I do those things more. You start to recognize these are the things that I really enjoy. There is joy here, and then you just do those things. Something that as a Buddhist can be a thing, it certainly was with me, was when you see suffering, your heart breaks and you just feel, really sad. You're broken-hearted, okay? So that can happen for sure, and I've definitely had, deep broken heart looking at the suffering of the world. And particularly for me, the suffering of animals and children just horrifies me, and I'm broken over it. So you can then kind of become sad, compassion then becomes sad, which isn't what it's like naturally. It's because the dualistic mind is seeing stuff outside that it doesn't like. I don't like suffering. Of course, no one likes suffering. But also there's a sense of can't do anything about it. But you can do something about it. Sit down, meditate, work with your own mind, and then you'll really know what to do, how to help others. Okay, so it's important, particularly in the face of our world right now, to cultivate joy. Little things. Eating chocolate, going for a swim, going for a walk, watching a comedy. Comedies are particularly good if they're not, derogatory or discriminatory. Watching even watching a Disney movie, although we all know about Disney. Anything. It doesn't matter. For me, patting the cat, playing with the cat, very joyful thing. I like to go for a little walk, even just for a 5-minute walk, and I find that very relaxing. Lying down, looking at clouds, watching birds. It can be anything. Just find these things and repeat. Just repeat. Just keep doing them. Okay. So these are the A.W.A.K.E.N journal prompt questions. This is not all of them, but I think these are the core ones. And remember, I'm going to give you these slides, so you don't need to jot these down. So I'll just go through these questions, but these are sort of questions that I asked when I was doing my journaling to figure out. See, because what are we really doing? Meditation, in the Tibetan word for meditation, is gong, which means to become familiar. And to become familiar with what? To become familiar with the mind. Okay, so these questions help us to see what's going on. What is happening in here? And then once you know, you can apply evidence and logic and reason to undo the negative thinking patterns that are completely irrational. And you can also sort of be aware, more aware when these things happen, what's behind them. When you know what's happening, you're less likely to be driven by it and be washed away by it. Excuse me, having some tea before I call again. Too late, already cold. Okay, so how do I feel when I'm in the midst of my anger, anxiety, and fear? So this is about what physical sensations are there? Sweaty palms, dizzy, blah, blah, blah. Is my anxiety, anger, anxiety, and fear always the same, or does it change in intensity? That's that question about giving it a ranking out of 10. 1 means not very strong, 10 means okay, so that's the next question down. What level is it? On average, how long do bouts of anger, anxiety, fear last? So this is about teaching you about the impermanence of it, that it doesn't last forever. What physical sensations accompany my anger, anxiety, and fear? So then that's really detailing what are the physical things that happen for me. You know, if you're angry, your face gets red, you clench your fists, you grind your teeth. Be aware of the things that happen. What causes the physical sensations? So usually it's fight or flight response in response to something. So what's the fight or flight response about? What's it coming from? So people who have anxiety, you know, about when they go into a public place, they don't want to have a panic attack in a public place and humiliate themselves and not be able to get out and find relief, you know. It's going into the public place that's causing it, but it's the belief that they will have a panic attack in a public place that is the real trigger. That's the cause of those sensations. It's tripping the fight or flight response, which trips all those sensations like sweaty palms and stuff. What are my negative thought patterns? You know, so I'm a worthless human. I'm an angry person. What are they? Jot them down, keep track of them. And then over on the other side, am I relating to my anger, anxiety, or fear in accordance with the fact that they are impermanent and empty of substance? Or am I relating to my anger, anxiety, and fear as though it were permanent and somehow true? Or as though it were an integral part of myself, an integral part of my identity? That's usually how we relate to it. We need to shift that. So we're recognizing this is an impermanent thing. It has no real substance. Okay? What is the origin of your disabling thought patterns? Well, this is a core belief thing. So people have core beliefs based usually on childhood experiences. Okay? What they were taught in childhood, what happened to them in their childhoods. Sometimes they get core beliefs around stuff that happened to them as adults, like traumatic experiences. But there is a core belief thing like, I'm not worth anything. I am of no value. I am a useless human being. I am not worthy of love. There's all these core beliefs there. They're all lies. They're all total fictions. But we want to know what they are so we can use logic to undermine them. And one of the ones I use about people who have, I've used this in the last 2 weeks about 10 times, people who feel that they're not good people. Because remember how I talked about the fundamental or true nature of mind is compassion. So you can say that another way. You can say that all beings are fundamentally good because compassion is a good, right? But in the West, and actually also sometimes in the East, we don't feel fundamentally good. We often feel fundamentally bad. So you want to recognize what the thought patterns are that are telling you you're fundamentally bad and undermine them with logic. And one of the exercises I get people to do is to look at someone you love or some being you love, like it can be a child, a partner, a kitty cat, a doggy, anything, any being that you love, right? Just look at them, allow yourself to feel the love you feel for them, allow it to come forward and grow, and then ask yourself, is it okay to hate that person? Is it okay to hate that kitty cat? Is it okay to hate that puppy dog? You know? And cheat sheet, the answer is always no. It is not okay to hate that child. It's not okay to hate your partner. It's not okay to hate the kitty cat. It's not okay to hate the puppy dog. It's never okay. Never ever. And then once you've got that answer, you know, sometimes the mind does tricky things and comes up with other answers. Those answers are bullshit. The real answer is no, it's not okay to hate those beings. Ask yourself, is it okay? So it's not okay to hate them. Why is it okay to hate me? Because that's fundamentally what is behind it. You are hating or disliking yourself. That is never okay. You need to actually feel that. You need to do this little practice. Get the love you feel for a child or a puppy dog or a kitty cat or your partner and ask, is it okay to hate them? And the answer is nope. And then ask yourself, but get that answer. Don't just say, oh, nope, it's not. Feel the love, feel the answer. Then turn it back on yourself. Okay, is it okay to hate me? Why is it okay to hate me then if it's not okay to hate them? Because you are to them what they are to you. Do you get it? This is really important. So if you can't hate your child or your puppy dog or your cat or your partner, why on earth are you hating yourself? Because to them, that's what you are. You're that love. Okay? That's all we are. We're just love underneath. We're little skins with love inside. That's it. And they're unicorns. Okay. Another one. What is the origin of the core beliefs triggering my negative thought patterns? Where do those core beliefs come from? You know, I had someone tell me once that they had, I'm removing some details so they can't be recognised, but who said that they had kind of an accident when they were young, very young, like 4 or 5, and it was a life-threatening accident, and they were yelling and yelling and yelling for help, and no one came to help them because no one heard the yelling. But to that child, their memory was, no one came, no one will help me, and that, for some reason, the child, trying to find a reason for that, turned it into, no one cares, no one loves me. I don't deserve to live. So, you know, really snowballed into this thing. And when that person worked out that memory of that accident in which they had not got help straight away, eventually they got help, had led to them thinking that they were not deserving of life, really changed them. They were transformed. So finding these core beliefs, finding the root of them, seeing how illogical it all is really helpful. And then what do I think will happen when I'm anxious, typo, angry, afraid, or sad? So what do you think is going to happen? Really figure that out. You know, if you're anxious, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think you're going to have a massive panic attack and never come out of it? That's impossible. Panic attacks are temporary. You know, when you're really, really angry, what do you think? You're going to go off the handle and do something monstrous? You're not a monster, so that's not going to happen. You know, what do you think is going to happen when you're afraid? What do you think is going to happen when you're sad? Find out what you think the worst is. What is your worst fear around the disturbing emotions? Which is the next question. And then, is that likely to happen? Now, some things have a tiny, tiny, tiny probability of happening, right? Like the person who thinks their fight or flight symptoms are indications of heart attack or stroke. And then they start the negative thinking pattern. I'm going to have a heart attack or stroke. I'm going to have a heart attack or stroke. And then have a panic attack, you know. There's a possibility that everyone has a possible risk. You know, everyone has a risk of heart attack and stroke, right? But what's the likelihood that it will happen right then to that person? That's what you've got to do. You've got to reduce your sense of this is an absolute certainty to actually get a realistic sense of the likelihood, okay? Some things are very easy to discount. Things like that are a little tricky because there is a small chance for everyone, okay? And then if it does happen, so what? Now, for me, with the fainting thing, I told you how I just went, well, so what if I faint? People will be kind, people will help. At the worst, they'll ignore me. Big deal, you know? If you have a panic attack in public, what's the worst that can happen? People you do not know, you probably will never see again, might think, what's going on with that person? But they really don't think about you as much as you think. Once you've gone, they will forget. they will not recall it very clearly or for long, okay? We overestimate what other people think of us or how much people think about us, particularly strangers. We really overestimate how much attention strangers pay to us. Okay, so for the person who think, like, I'm going to have a heart attack, stroke, what's the worst that can happen? Well, someone said at one point, well, I could die. I could be dead. That is pretty bad. And I was like, if you're not a Buddhist, that's bad. Yeah, but as a Buddhist, that's not bad. You know, for us, for Buddhists, and even if you're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, even if you're Hindu, death is not a frightening thing. It's something to be taken seriously, or it's not to be ignored or underestimated or trivialized. It's a big thing, But if you have any kind of spiritual belief, it is not a terrible thing, right? If you're an atheist, or even if you're agnostic, it's a bit trickier. But even then, you know, there is a way of accepting it as a reality, as unavoidable at some point. So there's no point fighting it or avoiding it or being afraid of it, you know. So there is a way of dealing with that. For most people, death is not the thing that they fear most. But for some people it is. And that takes a sort of unique way of dealing with it. Okay. That's the problem question. So again, I'll send you the slides so you can do these in your journaling. And that is it. Thank you. And that is, the picture there is Dana Monastery, which is a most beautiful monastery in a very, very nice part of Tibet, Eastern Tibet. Okay. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask them. I've unmuted you all. Any questions? Just pop your hands up so I know who wants to ask a question.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, have you got a question, Claude? Just go ahead.
All right. Well, it's sort of a question. I was in our break, Brad and Ariel came home, and I was mentioning how you had told us how that you had a condition where you fainted, and then you developed anxiety around the fear of fainting in public. And but eventually you got to a point where you weren't so worried because people were kind to you. If you faint, they want to help you. But I think, whereas I don't think I have that problem and don't suffer from anxiety, and my family would say that anger is a problem of mine. So when I'm saying to Brad and Ariel, I said, it's one thing if you faint in public because people will want to help you. But if you have an angry outburst, generally at family, they're the most things that trigger things, or close friends, or stupid. People don't want to help you. They want to run away. They, you know, that's a really good way of pushing people away and not getting people to come close to you. It's just sort of, I don't know what I'm saying. It's
no,
just,
I understand what you're saying, because I think I did when we were talking say that anger was a little bit of a unique situation, because it does affect others in a way that other things like being frightened or being sad or being anxious doesn't. So, and the thing about anger though is, if you focus on how impermanent it is, like you have a burst of anger, because Claudia, I would suggest to you that you're not fundamentally angry. I've known you a long time, and even though you say you have anger as an issue, I've never seen you angry.
I know. I think that I am not a fundamentally angry person, but while I'm going through this, I'm thinking of all the times that both my brother and sister have called me angry, and what an angry person I have, and what angry issues I have, and what, this is especially from my sister, you know, I really need help in that area, and it just makes me feel very isolated, like I grew up in some other family.
So what I would suggest to you is you need to work on work on the emotion that disturbs your calm, which for you is occasionally anger. And you do all these things that I was talking about, recognizing its impermanence, recognizing its emptiness, right? So you work on it yourself, right? Then when you're able to sort of summon the joy, rest in the joy, and diminish, the anger will not show anymore. It might rise and you'll go, oh, there's anger. And then you'll immediately go to your joyful memory. And when you've got lots of practice, you don't even need the memory anymore. You just go to the joy, you let the joy grow, you rest in the joy. You need to do the prep. You need to do that calm moment every day to do your journaling and stuff. And then, I swear, like, you know, I told you I had proper diagnosed disorders. They went in just months. Years and years and years and years of trying therapy and medication and all kinds of stuff. So I would suggest to you that anger is probably less sticky. I know everyone's so afraid of anger, but I think anger is probably less sticky than self-loathing and stuff like that. So I would suggest to you that, you know, you're 3 to 6 months away of never having another angry outburst. If you do this.
Well, I need it for my own health.
Yeah. And then go to your family and say, okay, I recognize that in the past I have had an issue with anger. This is why. Because you will know why after you go through this process. You'll know what the core beliefs are. You'll know what the negative thinking patterns are. And you'll be able to say to them, when you're calm, don't try and do it before you're cooked. Because they'll go, you know. So you just wait until you're really cooked and you know that I'm not going to have an angry outburst. And you just say to them, look, and even, you know, writing a letter is probably better, or an email or a text or something, you know, just to avoid the trigger. Just say, I know that I have had in the past a problem with anger, or you perceive that to be the case. This is why. This is what I was struggling with. I am now working with that. I am now over it. And they will accept that because they'll see that you've changed. And then the other thing is, you know, I talked about there's no substance to it. It's always triggered by something, right? So the core belief is the main trigger, but also other people's behaviours are a part of the trigger. Once you've worked out what your core belief is and why it triggers it and what your negative thought patterns are, their behaviour no longer becomes a trigger. Their behaviour is just their behaviour. I often describe it as like Velcro. At the moment, you've got your stuff and their stuff, and they go bang, and there's anger. It's just stuck. There's just anger there. Once your side of that is gone, no sticky. It just doesn't.
Yes. You know, I understand the words and I hear what you're saying, and it all makes perfect sense. It's just that space where between going, I'm going to remember to be calm, or just
it's not about remembering.
And I feel hot.
Yeah, you feel really hot. So it's not about remembering to be calm at all. It's about in a calm moment of your day. So you choose a point and you go through the awaken process, and you're journaling, you're figuring all out what your triggers are, why you get angry, what physical sensations are, you're hot, you're this, you're that. Understand that that's part of the fight or flight response, etc., etc., etc. So you go through this whole process yourself, with yourself. And then when you're in that environment that once triggered anger, if it does trigger it, you can just drop straight into the joy. I'm using that phrase, drop. You can just get in touch with joy straight away. And honestly, it caused me a huge amount of anxiety and panic. Now, I just kind of like drop into the joy, and I often just giggle. You know, I'm just like, it's kind of funny that I used to be like that, you know. So the other thing is, you don't have to believe that the true nature of thought is joy. You don't have to believe that the true nature of mind is joy. You don't have to believe any of that. If you just do this process, you will see that it works whether you believe it or not. And then that will tell you, oh, actually, this is probably true because this has worked. So you don't need to believe all that stuff. You just do it. The thing about Buddhism, or if you're Buddhist adjacent, you know, you kind of think it will be useful for you, but you're not buying in. If you just do it, you'll see that it will work. That's the thing.
I'm slowly getting onto the idea, and it's something we say to our children: the more you do something, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And I'm slowly getting that we have to, I have to practice this. That it,
Yeah, so you just, all you need is half an hour a day. That's it. And of that half hour, you know, do like 10 to 15 minutes of going through A.W.A.K.E.N and 10 to 15 minutes of silent sitting meditation. That's all you need. And just ask the people in your life, you know, to give you that time if it's difficult. And, or it's like exercise. You absolutely have to make time to exercise. You know, you have to, otherwise you won't. So you just absolutely have to do it. And the way I found the best way to do it was look at my day and see where already it was less stressful, already less noisy, already less out of control. And that's the time I chose. So for me, it's very early in the morning. But for you, it might not be early in the morning. It might be in the middle of the day. You know, it might be any time at all. But just look.
It's that weird time, I think, when you're a mum, is that even whether you have one child or more children, is that once they're in bed, then you're off the hook. Then you're sort of, that's your time to myself.
Yeah. But just be aware that at that time, you're probably also very tired.
Yes.
So it's probably better to try, like, you know, while, do you work during the day?
Yes. But it's our business, so I should, you know, I should give myself half an hour at some point. You know, if we take an hour for lunch, I don't need an hour.
Or you could, you know, you could set, if it's your own business, you could just set a particular time to do it, you know, instead of tea breaks or whatever.
Yeah. Like, that's right. Like I said, I think an hour for lunch is pretty excessive.
Or after you've dropped Ariel to school, but before you start work. You know, at some point there's bound to be a place. And I know
that's probably good, yes.
Yeah, I know it's hard. It was easier for me because I don't have kids. It was much easier for me. So
I feel like I've got an easy run too with only one, you know, and I see the mums bundling in their 3, 4 kids. It takes them a hell of a lot longer to get moving. And they've got 4 other human beings pulling them in completely different directions.
Yeah.
So I'm not I think I would ride to school maybe because I love the ride bit in the morning. And I had like an anxiety thing the other week, even though I don't suffer from anxiety, but I think this might be what it's like because it just made me want to cry because I didn't want to ride Ariel to school because I was so upset about swooping magpies. There's nothing I can do about that except now that the season is finished.
Yes, or take a different route.
Oh, I've tried their rampant.
Yeah. Oh, you know what we did? This is a bit of a distraction, but you know what we did with to stop our magpies swooping? We ages ago, before they nested, you know, the adults, we just started feeding them.
Yes, I did that last year, but I think it was a new batch this year, and they didn't know me. And anyway, I'm starting again.
Keep feeding them because, like, we feed me and a number of other homes in our little town here. We feed the magpies. There's a number of families that are doing it, and the magpies here have not swooped anyone.
Wow.
We're feeding them, and then so they see us as a source of food rather than as aggressors. And so, literally, like there's one particular guy who feeds them like a lot. He's always got for them, and so they all just go there to eat. And then when they're not at his house, they're at our house. We feed them vegetarian stuff, and he feeds them mince. So they've got a very rich diet. We're feeding them oats, and he's feeding them mince. And so they've got a very full diet. They're quite chubby, and they are not at all interested in attacking us. They just bring their babies here to eat. So
that's lovely.
Do it.
That's very nice. But yeah, so that was just one little thing. I mean, where I got to a point where I was crying. I'm going, I can't go. I can't do it. I'm so afraid.
Yeah, I understand.
But then
I was knocked off my bike when I was about 8 or 9 by a magpie, and I got a huge gash in my head, and it all bled. So yeah, I've got a bit of a sort of like thing about magpies too. But now that we feed them, they haven't been a problem.
Yeah. No, it's much better. So that's just my. But those anger things that have been, memories from when my brother has said this and my sister have said it. And and they're interesting. They're all interesting learning experiences. But I was really trying hard to find how I can get the joy out of those experiences.
No. So you find a moment of joy that was already joyful. And you just remember that. So I'll send you the notes to just prompt this. But so just repeat. You remember something that was already joyful, and then you remember how it felt in your body, and then you just put your attention on that feeling in your body of joy, and then that allows the joy that's behind everything, that is your true nature, to come through, and it will just get stronger and stronger. And then you're just in joy, and then you just say to yourself, this is in your prep, in your day-to-day half an hour. Yeah. Then you just say to yourself, anger is joy. And then when you're out and about in the world, after a few weeks, it will take a few weeks for that to actually get in there. Yeah. After a few weeks, you'll find where things trigger your anger, it'll be weaker in the first place when it rises, but the anger itself becomes a trigger for joy. You've Pavloved dogged yourself into associating anger with joy, which is its true nature. You've done a bit of a trick, you know. So when you start to feel anger, you'll instantly associate it with joy, and then you go, oh, joy. And then you remind yourself, anger is joy. And it goes away. So it's not like, it will take a few weeks. For me, okay, I had very debilitating anxiety and panic and obsessive thoughts, day in, day out, you know, constant obsessive thinking. So, which was really dark and negative. So, which is why when I was younger, I adopted the name Anguish as my surname. So I perverted my middle name, which was a Welsh Anguis. I perverted that into Anguish because that's how I friggin' felt. So, but now I think if I was going to pick a name based on my dominant emotion now, it would be smirky or happy or giggle, because that's like I'm happy and I'm kind of calm most of the time, but I'm also giggly. I have giggles, so I'd probably call myself giggly or something like that. The point is, you remember a joyful moment and you allow that to grow in yourself, and then you associate it with your negative or disturbing emotion. And then that's what you do every day when you're sitting down, when you're calm, not when you're angry, when you're calm. And then when you're out and about and you feel yourself getting angry, that will immediately trigger, oh, joy. And at first you'll have to say, anger is joy, and the joy, and remember the joy. But in time, you won't need to do those steps. You'll just be out, someone will trigger what would normally be anger making for you, but what will pop up instead will be joy. There'll be a tiny, tiny anger, and it will immediately change to joy. So it's not like you can go to... Yep, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just...
Did you want to say something?
No, I'm okay. Sorry, sweetheart.
That's right. So does that make sense? It's not like when you're in an angry situation for the next few months, right? When you're in an angry situation, you just have to walk away, okay? Even if you just in your mind, until this process starts to work. Because at first...
My problem is I think I tend to go in if I should walk away, but I'll go in, I'm ready to fight. I don't think I have flight. I think I only have fight.
Yeah. But just...
So I go in and I keep going in further, and then they'll bat back, and then I'll bat back, and then I'm thinking, why aren't you just letting this go? You keep batting back, so I'm going to bat back also. But anyway, that was...
You'll get through it. You just need to do this process. Honestly, it's a simple thing. It takes a bit of time, but it really works. And the other thing is the Buddha, we should have had that quote here, but the Buddha said in his later teachings, you know, he said, the mind is like the sky. Your nature is the sky. You know, it's a metaphor, but it's not a bad thing to remember. You know, when you're starting to feel agitated, just remember, in my nature, I'm like the sky. What is the sky like? It's open. It's really open. It doesn't react to stuff. It's just what it is. And it's luminous. It's full of light. Even at night, it's full of light. And it's free, you know. It has no container. It has no limits.
Yeah.
It's really important.
That's awesome. I'm going to make a picture out of my mind is the sky. That is fabulous.
So and whenever I look at the sky, that's what I think. You start to become quite immersed. And so whenever I look at the sky, I think of mind, you know, vast, open, unlimited, no container, everything connected there. Or the ocean. The ocean's another good one.
I like the sky.
The sky's better.
When I lived in Lismore, I studied art at the uni there for about a year and a half. And one of my, it's always, you know, projects are always supposed to be processes. And I had a disposable camera way back then, and I took photos of the sky. And then I went to a paint matching shop and I said, please make me this colour. So there's somewhere down in Lismore is a Nicastro blue. And I made a triptych. Oh, this is Claudia's lazy art. Three pictures of blue. Of rectangle.
I would love that art. I would love that. All right.
It's very conceptual. It's all for the audience to imagine.
Also, you can just look at it. You can just gaze at that and remember. That's my nature. This openness. All right, we've hit the time. So, does anyone else have any other questions before we wind up?
Yeah, I just have a quick one.
Go ahead.
So I think I've missed a step here. So when you're meditating, being still, thinking of joy, and then how do we get from that to associating it with anger? Is it that when we're in a situation of anger, we try and remember that so that we have that connection that we automatically start doing that? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. Okay. So there's two-step process. There's the prep moment where you know each day you've got a time where you sit down, you do your journaling, and you summon joy. You do that meditation where you remember joy for a moment. You place your awareness on it. You let it grow, and then you say a little aphorism. You'll all make up your own aphorism, right? Depending on what thing you're working with. But then you say, when you feel that joy very strongly, right, then you say, anger is joy, or anxiety is joy, or whatever.
Okay.
And then you remember the nowness part, and after you say that, anger is joy, then you just try and stay in the present moment with the joy. And then do that for a few months, and then you'll still, when you're out in the world, you'll still be having anger, you'll still be having anxiety, it'll still be going on. But then slowly, you also apply the A.W.A.K.E.N in the moment. So this is something I probably should have said when Claude was talking. So when you're in the moment and you're feeling anxious or angry, right? So anger requires you step away, because you can't work with anger while you're yelling at someone or while they're yelling at you. You have to step away. And then you go through A for awareness. So just be aware how you feel. How does anger make me feel? My face is red, my hands are clenched, my jaw's clenched. I feel like I'm going to explode. How do you feel? And it's non-verbal. You just, awareness on how you feel, and also what you're thinking. Like you might be thinking, I'm going to slap that person. You know, what are you thinking? Or often behind anger, and journaling will pull out for each of us what it is. But often behind anger is a sense of insult. Like they've neglected me, they've rejected me, they've denied me, they've blamed me.
My work.
Yeah, they've stolen something from me, they've taken something from me, they've hurt me, they've cheated me. usually there's some sort of injustice feeling, which is
Yeah.
very me. I'm not meaning that there's no injustice. Of course there is. But
Yeah. Yeah.
coming from clinging to the person who you feel has been wronged, yourself, you feel you've been wronged.
Mm-hmm.
So find all that out in your journaling and stuff. But then in the moment, right, you're aware of what you're thinking, you're aware of what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Then you welcome it.
Mm-hmm.
You say to yourself in the moment, while you're angry, while you're anxious, you say, I consent to feel this way. And then straight away,
Yeah.
it weakens a bit. For many people,
Yeah.
that's the last step. Because for
Mm-hmm.
many people, it's only big because they resist. It's
Yeah.
only because they deny. It's only big
Yeah.
because they avoid. So as soon as you say, I consent to feel this way, and I'll send you the notes so that you've got all this to look at. You go, I consent to feel this way. So in the moment, you go, I consent to feel this way. Recognizing that if you don't consent, it'll get bigger. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't avoid it anyway. You're not trying to run away from it. You just consent. Okay, I consent to feel this way. And for most people, that will diminish it greatly. And then the next step is to, if it's still there, which for most people it will be, then you analyze. Okay, why do I feel this way? So for example, an anxious person is usually anticipatory anxiety. They're anxious. They're going into a situation that has triggered anxiety in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out why. You analyze the situation. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What is the core belief feeding it? What are the negative thinking patterns? Those prompt questions. In those, when you're journaling in your prompt questions, you'll find a handful, 3 or 4, that really tell you something. And then in the moment you just pull those out. Like for me, when I was painting, while I was feeling anxious, I go, okay, why are you anxious? You're anxious because you're in public and you're afraid of fainting. Why are you afraid of fainting? Because you've got neurocardiogenic syncope. What's the worst that can happen? I'll actually faint. So what? Well, actually, people will be kind. People will blah, blah, blah. With anger, as I said, it's a bit difficult because people will run for their lives. But that's why I said when anger's happening, if you're the person feeling angry, right, just say, I'm sorry, I have to go. Say sorry first. I'm really sorry, I have to go. And you walk away. Even if it's just into the toilet and shut the damn door. And they can bang on the door all they like. Not engaging, right? But if someone else is angry, right, you unfortunately have to wait for them to figure it out. Or you can say to them, look, this is making me really uncomfortable. I need to be out of here. Walk. And usually they'll get more and more angry, right? But unfortunately you can't just wear their anger, you have to walk away. People who are angry really want to be seen, they feel slighted somehow. So sometimes it's good to say, look, I'm really sorry. I understand you're upset, right? But I need to get out of here because this is not good for me. Visit this when we're calm. So you set this up in your journaling. If you've got someone angry in your life, unfortunately, you can't do anything about their anger.
No.
But you can protect yourself from the anger. It's your anger, you've got to remove yourself. Unfortunately, sometimes when there's 2 people, they're both angry, and one removing themselves makes this one angrier. But unfortunately, you have to do it. And that's why doing this every day for 20 minutes to 30 minutes is good, because the other person or the people around you will start to see, hey, that person's not anxious anymore. That person's not running away anymore. Hey, that person's come to lunch when there's all these other people and I know they hate being in public. You start to see something's going on and they might ask you, and it was an opportunity then to go, oh, look, I struggle with anxiety. I'm working on it, and it's actually helping me to recognize what the causes of my anxiety are and recognize what my negative thought patterns are. And so I can be here at the moment. I'm still uncomfortable and I might need to excuse myself to go to the toilet to splash some water on my face every now and then. But I am working with it, I think human beings are, because I believe You know, human beings are compassion underneath, you know. Sometimes it's so veiled that they seem to be monsters, you know.
Yeah.
Avoid them. But most people, it just takes a little scratch, just a little tickle, and the compassion pops up, you know. And I find being upfront about what we're struggling with, it'll bring it up. They'll bring the compassion up. If not, that person you should not be around for a while. Because if they're not able to connect with compassion when you're vulnerable, there's a real difficulty there for you.
Yeah.
But this process is about working with ourselves, and we will find, and you will find that your world kind of changes. So yeah, so what were we up to? Welcome it, analyze it, and bring to bear your knowledge about, like, for example, if your fear is having a heart attack. Okay, I had a friend that was their fear, and they were on a medication that meant that they were 60% less likely to have a heart attack than a normal person. Even though they were on a medication for a heart condition, that medication meant that they were safer than most people. Reminded themselves of that. Reminded themselves that every other time they felt anxious, sweaty palms, dizzy, have not had a heart attack. I think I calculated for me, the number of times I felt anxious about fainting was pretty much every day for 35 years. And often more than once, you know. And I added that up one day. I did the maths with a calculator, and it was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And I could show to myself, of those 30,000, 40,000 times, I'd only actually fainted 4 times. You know, so the likelihood, and never in a moment when I was anxious. Because the anxiety pushes your blood pressure up. And for my disorder, that's actually protection against passing out. But my triggers were pain and heat and stuff. So it's aware that, you know, okay, unless those triggers are there, I'm not going to pain, you know. And those triggers are there. Once it was diagnosed and I knew what it was, I was doing things to mediate it. So I water load, I salt load, and if I can sort of, I never used to be able to feel it before, it would just hit, you know. I've been meditating and stuff, I can actually see is not the right word, but I can kind of feel it. I think, oh, this is a little unbalanced here, I need to take some steps. So since I've been able to see it coming, because before I'd just be la 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 la, bang. You know, and that was terrifying. But now that I can kind of see it, I will go, oh, I'll drink water, I'll sit down, I'll rest. If it still feels like, oh, there's a little bit there, a bit of a trigger there, usually if it's hot or something, or because I have chronic pain, you know, which is one of my triggers. Pain is a trigger. I will lie down flat. So now that I've been doing that, I have not fainted at all for years. But the anxiety lingered well beyond the pain and the fainting. So you bring your knowledge to bear, and then you embrace joy. So both in the moment, you just summon joy, you remember joy, you think of joy, and then you say your little aphorism. Joy. Joy in the moment. And then again, you'll have to remove yourself if it's anger. Because you can't sort of do this when someone's screaming at you. So, or you're screaming at them. So, but the awareness will give you the space, that first step will give you the space to go, okay, I am red in the face, I'm feeling my pulse racing, I'm feeling very tight, I need to step away. So the awareness part will alert you, and then you go and do, you'll sit, you know, what I used to do is I'll go and sit in the toilet, go and sit outside, or just take myself away just for a few minutes. And you know, if it's happening in a meeting or something like that, which is happening to me all the time, I would just go, just need to go to the bathroom, completely normal behavior. Just sit down, take a breath. I'll show you the breathing in a minute, and then we'll wind up. Take a breath, calm, and then go through A.W.A.K.E.N. And then you can go back, and then you're cool, you know.
Yeah.
Just that awareness part alerts you, I need to step away when it's anger. When it's anxiety, it's better to stay with it, to not remove yourself from the situation. So if you're anxious in public places, just stay there. Because you've done the rehearsal at home in a safe space.
Yeah.
You get nowness, so then you just stay in the present moment. And when you stay in the present moment, you usually, and we're using the joy or breathing, placing attention on our breathing. It's very hard to be angry when you've taken a deep breath and you're just sitting with your breathing and you're staying in the now. It's very hard to maintain anger.
I actually do that quite a bit. I went to a talk by a monk a little while ago, and we were taught to do the breathing. And I actually do that a lot when I start to feel angry or anxious, or just when I need to still my mind. I do it, and I find it helps a lot.
It's really helpful. There's a lot of science around it too, which I won't go into, but there's a lot of science around it. So let's just do that now, so we all know how to do it. This might be a little different to how you were taught. You're talking about a Buddhist monk taught you it?
Yes.
Right. So did you do the one side, other side?
No, it was just the breathing.
Okay. So there's one called Vajra breathing, which is to breathe in one side and then out the other and blah. But that's all too complicated. So what I just do is in through the nose and slowish, but not too forced. Try not to force it. But you do want to slow it down a little bit. So in through the nose.
Ariel.
Short pause, and then slow out through the mouth. So you are kind of controlling a little bit of control on the out breath, so that the out breath is significantly longer than the in. So and it's kind of a 4 to 8. So don't count though, because the counting becomes control, and we want to be relaxed. So just breathe in. And you use your diaphragm to drive it. So you pull your diaphragm down to draw the air in, and you push the diaphragm out to push the air out. Oh, it's the other way around. Push the diaphragm out to draw the air in and push it, and then bring it in to push the air out. So because I've been doing that for years, and I've trained myself that when the air comes in, my mind calms, and when I breathe out, the body relaxes. I've trained myself over decades. Now I can do that just a handful of times, like 3 times, and my body's just like limp, and my mind is quite calm. So you do that, and I would do that before meditation every single time, and I would do that before you're journaling every single time. But sometimes it's good if you have a moment of panic or something, and you can sit down with your journal while you're panicked, while you're anxious, while you're angry, and write down what you're thinking. It'll be, when you look back at it, it'll be very telling, because you'll be, if you're angry, you'll be writing, I hate them, this rant, But then when you look, but it's good to see what you're thinking. How dare they do that to me? They're disregarding my feelings. And there's always something like that, some hurt underneath it. And that will be a core belief. You'll find a core belief that says, people don't like me. People don't respect me. Underneath that, I'm not likable. I'm not lovable. See? So you'll track back to this core belief. And I fundamentally think at the root of all of it, anxiety, anger, fear, jealousy, envy, underneath all of it is that fundamental sense of I'm not good enough, or I'm bad. And that is a lie from every sense, in every way. But from very Buddhist perspective, all beings are fundamentally good. They have the Buddha nature. They're the same as the Buddha. Human beings, monkeys, apes, doggies, cats, goats, sheep, cows, chickens, ants, everything. Fundamentally good. All have that awareness at their heart that has one quality, love. So you see the way animals love each other all the time. You also see them being dicks like us all the time. But there's like real care in all sentient beings for their close ones,
Yeah.
So, and humans especially, there's real care there. And sometimes some people have said to me, we need to wind this up soon because you're taking way too much of your time. But sometimes people say to me, I'm not a very compassionate person. I'm not a very loving person. And I have to hold it in because I often just want to go, liar! But I don't. I just hold it in. And I just ask them quite simply, do you want to suffer? And they usually wait a minute. So you guys, do you want to suffer?
No.
Does anyone want to?
No.
So do you want to be happy?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the corn, the acorn or the kernel of full-blown, boundless compassion and loving kindness. The wish not to suffer is compassion. So at the moment, you can recognize, oh, I have compassion, if only for me, And then the wish to be happy is the kernel of loving kindness, the wish for all beings to be happy, which at the moment you can recognize, I have it at least for me, it is there. And then you just look at others, okay? You will have people you love, and you'll have people you're neutral about. You'll have people you don't know, so you don't know, and you'll have people you think are your enemies. And if you go through it, you'll see actually there's quite a lot of compassion and love there. Often with animals, we have a lot of compassion for animals because they don't speak back. They don't,
I don't know, you haven't met my cat.
All right, yeah. My cat's a real tricky one to love too, because he bites and scratches because he's got a lot of anxiety. So, yeah, but anyway, if you have compassion for yourself and loving kindness for yourself, if you don't want to suffer, if you want to be happy, it is there and can become boundless. It can spread out to all beings. So you are, that's your nature actually. And there's the evidence. You've got it at least for yourself. The dualistic mind can't completely block it out. It has to at least retain it for itself because it can't completely eradicate it because it's our true nature. So it's there. Anyway, so I'll send you the notes. I'll send you the recordings or make them available to you. I'm not going to make the recordings widely available because I've got the book deal thing. So, and I can't really talk much about that because the thing about publishing is it's precarious. So at the moment there's a deal, but I might not actually write the book in the end. I might decide, nah, I don't want to do it. I might write the book and send it to them, and they may have just invested in something ridiculous and be bankrupt and can't publish it. I might send it to them and they go, oh, this is not what we wanted, we're not going to publish it. Even though there's a deal, it could not come about. So I'm not really going to talk about it too much other than that, and to say that I'm not going to share this stuff around just in case it does become a book. Because I have an agreement with them, to make this into a book. So that's the dealio. Any other questions before we wind it up and run for lunch?
Thank you, Dallas.
Thank you so much, Dallas. It was awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Have a good Sunday afternoon.
And just send me questions via Facebook. Oh, Kerry, are you on Facebook?
I am.
Just friend request me. I'm on Facebook as Dallas John Baker.
Okay.
And then just send, and I'll send, when you friend me, I'll send you an invite to be in the group, the online Facebook group where we share stuff about meditation and stuff like that. So
Okay.
if you have questions about this, just message me and I'll answer them. Or you can email me. You've all got my email address as well. And I'll send you all my notes. I've got a lot more. I've got all of these notes that I didn't really talk to.
Oh, wow.
I didn't really mention any of these things. I just gave the core. All right.
I'm going to head off, Dallas.
I
So
was so rushed. It was supposed to be over 2 days, but had to squeeze it all in.
thanks,
And
Dallas.
Time.
Dallas.
Do we have meditation tomorrow?
Yes, always. Rain, hail, or shine. Even if I'm dead, I'll be in this chair.
Goodbye.
See